Welcome to Career in Progress, a podcast about building the skills that build your career. In this episode, I explore the fascinating world of transferable skills, how creativity, discipline, and storytelling flow between the stage and boardroom. In today's episode, I sit down with my amazing guest, Jyotsna Vaidee, a top tech leader and currently the Vice President of Product at Reddit. Her career journey includes leading teams and innovative giants like Microsoft and Google, shaping products including Google Ads, YouTube, Google Shopping, and most recently Reddit, used by millions. But that's only one half of the story. Jyotsna is also an acclaimed Bharatanatyam dancer with award winning productions and years of dedication to this intricate Indian classical dance form. Well, building one successful career takes perseverance. Building two, that takes vision, grit, and extraordinary inspiration. Let's dive into another inspiring career in progress conversation. Jyotsna, welcome to Career in Progress, a podcast about building the skills that build your career. I am so thrilled to have this conversation with you today about transferable skills that have built your two incredible careers. I and my trusted partners, my pen and my learning manual or notebook are ready to learn from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Purnima. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I am happy to share a little bit about my journey and, you know, uh, as a product manager, as well as a artist. And it's kind of interestingly, those two careers have, you know, been remained intertwined pretty much my whole career and so yeah, I'm happy to share a little bit about like what are some of the skills that are transferable across these two. um, I think just to give a little bit of background on the tech side, I'm a computer engineer as a by education. Did pretty much started off as an engineer, not surprisingly, in the tech world, and then moved into product management for the last more than decade plus. And on the artist side, since we're looking to draw parallels here, I am a Indian classical dance artist, also known as Bharatanatyam. And I started learning this art form at a very young age, which is very common for this art form.
Mm.
But somehow I think, it's the real test comes when you are getting into university and beyond. Like, can you really
Yes.
keep up this art form in a serious manner and turn something that you learned as a child into a career, into a journey, really? I hesitate sometimes to use the word career when it comes to the arts because I feel arts are just a journey sometimes with no
Sure.
destination. Um, so that's a little bit about me, and these are the two kind of parallel worlds I live in. And yeah, there are a lot of, I think, transferable skills. I'll start with one that comes to mind for me, and I think that is about having a vision, right?
Mhm.
So having a vision driven by, I think of it as driven by empathy, right? So
Yeah.
when you're building products, especially in my world where we're building products for consumers, so we're building products for billions of users, uh, one has to think often about like what need is this product solving? How is it going to make someone's life easier? How is it going to bring value to their life? How is it going to touch them? And we know this through building many of these consumer products that it's just as emotional as it is functional.
Yep.
And I think that having that vision of here's what I want to, here's how I want to touch my users. I think that is very similar when when I think about creating a new production in as an artist. I typically start with a vision. I don't know how it's going to pan out. I don't actually know how we're going to execute or who's going to be in it or how long it'll take. But I like to start like just writing down, a vision statement of like, this is my dream. This is what I would love to share with my audience. This is what I want them to take away when they leave the theater. And for me, those two, so that's one very, I think, common sort of way of thinking that actually is transferable between these two, careers. So yeah, that's one that came to mind for me.
I love what you said. It's like start with the why. Right. I
Yes.
think Simon Sinek, has an incredible book where he talks about the power of why, and why you start with the why. Very curious to know, Jyotsna, you are the vice president of product at Reddit. You have an incredible career journey with top companies, Microsoft and Google. You are also decorated, celebrated artist with many award-winning productions. What does a vision statement for somebody who's starting to build the skill of creating a vision statement? What would that vision statement look like? And I really, would love to double click on the word empathy. You talked about vision with empathy. How does that look like when you actually start creating that?
Yeah. I can, I think I can think of it as start with some, maybe give an example here. But
Would love that.
few years back, I mean almost 5 years back at this point, I created, I had this idea, this from traveling and just reading, um that art can convey more, can convey and create empathy for scientific problems which maybe people cannot connect with by just the facts. And so
Mm,
one of the ideas that I had was, can we create a work which it elicits empathy for climate change.
mm,
And we all know that this is a this topic is, it's touching our lives in more ways than we can
yes.
think. It's happening every day. There's of course in the tech world as well, there are a lot of startups like trying to solve and companies trying to solve various climate change issues. But I started with this vision statement of like, what would it mean to create a production that that creates empathy for this topic, where when I was and my main goal was like, is there a way to create empathy that goes beyond just facts? Because yeah, a
Mm,
lot of facts and numbers are thrown at us, but somehow we're, it's easy to get desensitized to those things. The but sometimes stories can really tug at your heart, like a personal story, a story of a specific tribe or a specific set of people, like that can really tug at your heart. And then just to kind of draw that parallel, I think of the same, I actually use this same technique when it comes to how I like to encourage my team to also build products. So when we start off with a what we call a PRD, like a product requirement document, one of the things I really like to ask the team is, I'm big on the why for sure. And then I always try to say like, let's take a user or a customer and go deep and write almost like a story about how they would use this feature or this product, and what, and basically their journey, and in that journey what does this feature or product do for them. So, and actually this is something that I think, at least in the early days of Google, like I saw a lot of a lot of us learned this skill, and I think it was a really good training ground for this. So I think this ability to take an example or a story or a
mm,
case study, if you want to
yeah.
call it, in the tech world, and be able to go deep into it, is a great way then to really kind of ask, kind of get into the details of how this is going to affect somebody, or or coming back to your question about is starting with vision with empathy. So I think that that kind of an example like really helps make that come to life.
That makes so much value and sense in what you're saying, which is put the audience at the center of it, no matter what you're doing. It really reminds me of, years ago when blenders were new. My father brought this incredible food processor home, which had like 100 different options and blades, and gave it to my grandmother. And he said, "This is going to be great for you." And she said, "Can this make this juice that I like to have?" And he said, "I'm not sure." And then she said, "Then why do I need it?"
Right.
Right. It absolutely defines the purpose with the
The who.
customer, the experience. Yes. The
Exactly. Yeah.
who and then the why are aligned together. And another part that you mentioned was the storytelling piece. The value, the second skill set I heard from you in this, is the ability to tell stories, which you do in both the tech world, and as well as the dance world. When you conceive a story and when you have somebody in the center of it, how do you explain that story to somebody else?
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think one thing I've generally, I think we all as humans, and just even if you think if you take a child, they love stories, right? You can talk to them about, oh, this is you can talk to them about a concept abstractly, or whatever the concept may be, but the moment you turn that into a story, it's so much more engaging,
Mm,
whether it's a moral value, whether it is whether it's some concept that you're trying to explain to them. So I generally think as humans we all love stories. So I think when I think about in the tech world as an example, I specifically worked, especially in the last decade, I've worked quite a bit in the advertising space. And, I've kind of built a lot of products like 0 to 1 in this space. And a lot of this has, to me, it comes down to, like, the way I think about it is like, if you start with the goal of like, hey, how do you connect users with the right uh, businesses, whether that is local businesses, whether that is products that they would like, how do you make the right connections, and then how do you help businesses grow, right?
mm,
So then from there, when I think about again, going back to, if you were to build a new feature or a new product, I typically would start with a story with one of our businesses and see what is
mm,
the problem that they have, and how is this really going to solve that. Maybe their biggest problem is like acquiring new customers. So if that is their biggest challenge, then how is it that what we're doing is going to help them, and maybe taking a very specific business in a specific city that sells a very specific type of product, and like really trying to walk through, and for a specific audience. So maybe they are a company that sells organic food, so what kind of
mm,
audience would they try to reach, like really trying to break it down into the like getting into the details. So I think storytelling focuses um helps us go from, we started with the vision in our conversation today. So I
yes.
think the storytelling is the next step because it helps you visualize that vision and start looking at the details, but with a very specific person or business or customer in mind. So you are really now it starts to feel much more real because now you're really talking about a business that you care about or a person that you care about. I think the same thing goes with the arts also, because storytelling tugs at people's hearts. You can tell you can complete, you can say something very quickly and make it very factual, but what art can do is, again, like really go into those nuanced um, emotions and feelings which maybe are hard to even articulate with words. So again, I think, yeah, I think storytelling is very important, and it somehow, you know as children, that's what we love. We as parents, we love telling bedtime stories, but somehow we lose that as
Mm.
we kind of lose that touch. So I think keeping connected with that, I think, is just a great way to connect with your audience, no matter who.
I really, see so much passion in what you just said and how beautiful you articulated that. Have a vision, which is at the broadest level, know why you are doing, have empathy, know who you are doing it for, double click on that to get into the details of knowing exactly what you are looking to solve for, the specifics, and make it simple enough for everybody to understand through storytelling. If I had to kind of map that
Yeah,
out,
yeah,
right? Does that kind of
yeah.
align to what
That's
you
exactly
said?
what I was trying to say. Yeah.
I love that because, like you rightly said, we all grew up with stories. And as a matter of fact, before all of this came in, we are, a tribe. That's how we all, as humans, passed on knowledge, right? It was
Yeah.
all through storytelling, cave drawings, and so on and so forth. Beautifully said. I would love to switch, a gear to know one more aspect of this. You are the artistic director of Samudra Dance Creation, where you lead collaborative productions. Parallelly, as a product leader, you are navigating product features cross functionally, leading these big programs and projects. Both require navigating different perspectives, personalities, feedback, creative inputs. How do you balance artistic or functional differences to make cross functional collaboration successful? And for somebody who's looking to build this skill, what are a couple of pro tips that you're able to share for them to build the skill?
Yeah, that's you're touching on a really good point, which is I think collaboration is a especially in the world that we live in now, right? Like the collaboration I think is key. Um and particularly cross-functional collaboration, like as you also hit upon that, which is what that means is, it's a buzzword, but like if I were to just break it down in a very simple way, like I think at the end of the day, to build anything, you need a lot of different types of skills.
Mm.
And that's one. The second aspect is, you know, the more you can get different kinds of perspectives, the better your product is going to be. Because, especially again, going back to where I have spent a lot of my time, which is in the consumer space, obviously being in a lot of consumer companies like Google and Reddit, when you're building products for hundreds of millions or billions of users, everybody is different, and therefore it's really important to get a lot of different perspectives. You're not building a solution for a single customer, right? So it's even more important that you have voices from across the world, whether it's different languages, whether it's different cultures, because the way they use their devices, or the way they just they use technology is going to be very different.
Yep.
um so I think both are two aspects. So these are two different things. One is within your team, you need to be it's important that to make this. So we talked about the vision, we talked about the storytelling. Now we're coming a little bit more into the way I look at it, is into the execution side. What does it take to
Yes.
now bring this to life? Now, to bring this to life, the most important thing are the people that you bring
Mm.
together to form your team, whether that's a virtual team, or whether that is a team that's going to report to you in a corporate environment. Either way, you're building a team. So I think how you choose the skills and strengths, I think is very important. The second aspect is you also need many different disciplines. So, as an example, like as a product manager, of course, you need to partner with an engineering team, you need to partner with a marketing team, you need to partner, with the sales team, you need to partner with the UX designers. It's highly cross-functional in that sense, that you really need people who are experts in what they do, but are able to come together to see that common vision, that common story, and build towards it. So again, I go back to the why and the vision and having that clear articulation, because it actually helps everybody who's working on this really have this really have this common dream. And then the way I look at it is, it's important that each of them is able to voice their opinions on, how we should build this, or what are the pros and cons, what are the trade-offs. And it's super important, I think, as a product leader. I think one of the most important roles that you play is actually listening to
Mm.
all these different perspectives. But also at the end of the day, being able to be decisive. So an engineer might come to you and say, this is going to take 5 months. And then how do you decide? Like, if you need to get something out, you want to ship something in a couple of months, but someone tells you it's going to something that you've designed or you want to design is going to take 5 months, then how do you make those trade-offs in terms of prioritization? How do you kind of trade off between, either the complexity and, simplicity? So all of those things, I think are these are the kind of the challenges that you're going to have during the execution phase. So, and just to again quickly just summarize, right? Like, I think in the execution phase, it's, to me, it's about building the right team, bringing people with the right skills, setting the right virtual team of cross-functional experts, and then creating an environment and processes where, like, all of them can be heard. And ultimately that will, as a product manager, you should realize that that's what's going to give you the best outcome, is if you hear each of their perspectives, because then you're going to miss something otherwise. I actually think the best, if you can turn each of them into owners of the vision,
I
that's
love
the
that.
best outcome.
So
So
co-creation in certain ways.
yeah, co-creation with leadership. So
I love that. And do you see the same parallelism when you create your productions
yes,
in
definitely.
your dance world?
Yeah, 100%. So, with Samudra Dance Creations, it's, I really actually founded this because in the Bay Area, there's a lot of artistic talent.
Yes.
And a lot of students, they have a lot of opportunity because there's a lot of schools in the Bay Area. But what I saw was there's a lot of what I would almost call professional artists. Some of them even have parallel careers in tech, who are, kind of in the Bay Area. And in many cases, there's so much talent that I felt like having something where we could all collaborate would really tap into their skills and also create, opportunities. So with Samudra, mostly I work with professionals in whether they are musicians, dancers. We worked with poets. So we try to also again cross, discipline. Try to cross different disciplines. Yeah, but every time we start a production, like I have a production coming up called Ananta
Yeah.
on September 13th. And once we set the vision for that, once I set the vision, one of the key aspects was, building the team and having the right folks involved, creating an environment where we could collaborate, but also hear each other's perspectives. Um, and then, of course, all of this is, this is like in the execution phase, right? So I do think that there's a lot of parallels when it comes to collaboration, building the right teams, whether that is, you looking at cross-functional skills, strengths and weaknesses. So I think all of these things, the team building, I think, is also a key part of this.
I'm so excited about your upcoming production. I will provide the link to that in my description for everybody and encourage everybody to experience your grand productions. Uh, Jyotsna, heard so many skills you brought up. One, the ability to have a diverse perspective because we are ultimately a microcosm of the audiences we are looking to cater, be it, a product feature or be it a dance production or any human experience that we are looking to create. The second one you brought up was just so critical and so valuable, which is how do you make people heard? How do you create that psychological safety and environment in the process? And that needs to be intentional where everybody feels open to speak up. The
Yes.
third, setting a clear vision so that everybody knows what we are rallying towards. I think it was Brene Brown who said, clarity is kindness.
Yeah.
right? So really being intentional and clear about where do we want to go, and everybody being on the same page of where and why and for who are
Yes.
we looking to go. And the fourth that I heard was listening, which came up many times. You said, how do you be open to ideas to listen? Because sometimes that can get really hard, which
Yeah.
is when you have a vision, it's really hard to say, but I believe this is, and a lot of it comes from passion, more or less. But
Yes.
it's a hard and intentional skill that you brought up, that you have parallelly built and executed on both dimensions that you operate in.
Yeah, definitely. I think you're touching on a interesting point, which is, um, I think there will be differing opinions, right?
Mm,
That's and whether it's in the whether it's building a tech product, the question is, what are the approaches you have to find to kind of maybe if there are multiple options and they each have their trade-offs, or there, again, different opinions on which option is the best. How do you what is your framework? And I think at least in the tech world, like at least in my world, we use a lot of experimentation and data to kind of make our decisions, because one lesson I've learned is my opinion of what should be in a specific
mm,
product. I mean, it's good to have an opinion. It's always good to start with a hypothesis, but you also need some framework to test your hypothesis. So I think being somewhat, especially, when you're, again, going back to sort of the consumer world where every user is different. So how do you build
yes.
one product that works for billions of users? And that a lot of that comes down to kind of hypothesis and testing, and learning from that. So being willing to kind of to use a very tech word like launch and iterate, right? So, and I think I kind of use it's not as easy to use this approach in the artistic world, but I try. And one of the ways in which I do it is sometimes I will create, if I have a full length production in mind that is 60 minutes long, I will
Mm,
create like a 30-minute version or a 15, 20-minute version, and maybe do smaller showings where we can like learn what's working, what's not working. So this launch and iterate approach, I think, both keeps you humble because you know that you're never going to get it perfect the first time, and you know that you have to keep iterating and keep improving on, so it's not just you build something and you throw it out there and you move to the next thing. Really, it's a continuous process of improving, and that's true with products too. We are always improving, the products that are out there, that at least that I've built. So
So be agile no matter what you're doing.
yeah,
Seek
exactly,
feedback, you know,
exactly.
be willing to learn, test, fail, iterate, and have a growth mindset is what
Yeah.
I'm hearing, is a core foundation of no matter what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, at Google, we call this launch and iterate, just to keep it, it's just a
sure.
phrase that's used, but that's exactly the mindset of, you don't have to try and get it perfect and in one shot. You
Mm.
can, kind of do this in meaningful components, and, but be willing to, iterate and take feedback and, adjust as you go along. So yeah, I think that's important no matter what you're doing, is just having that continuous feedback, being willing to be, first of all, you need to create that feedback loop. So I
Mm.
think it's important to think about what is it, whatever you're doing, whether that is, building a product or whatever your space or domain may be, think about what is that feedback loop for you, and then be able to really tap into that, because that's gold. Feedback is gold. So never shy away from feedback. So that's how I look at it.
I think if Jyotsna, you ever write a book, that's a title for you right there. Feedback is gold. I think
Feedback
that's
is
so
gold.
well said,
Yeah,
because it is, it's sometimes hard because, it's hard gold in some ways
it
sometimes,
is.
right? But how do you embrace that? I'm hearing so much of persistence when whether you're building a product, whether you're building a production, that a mindset of persistence seems to be so important. And I'll get really tactical here. Uh, were there moments when you felt like, oh my God? I can't do this. This is
Yeah.
really hard. And if there were, how do you push through for somebody who's looking to build these skills that you mentioned so
Yeah.
beautifully? What would be two or three things they can actually take away and practice today?
It's a really good question. I think look, I think to be an expert in anything, to in whatever field you're in, um, I think it takes. I have there's two words that come to mind for me. One is consistency, and the other is discipline. So, what I mean by that is, nobody can become, I mean, unless you're a prodigy, right? Which there are. I certainly wasn't any prodigy, but I think when I think about my artistic career, I am where I am just purely because I think of consistency. I may have had some there are times when it was really hard to balance work and my artistic career. There were times when the other way around was true as well, right? Like and also when life changes happen, like you have a child, or you kind of go through these big life moments. It does feel really hard to whether it's keeping up with your career, or whether it is uh, trying to do two careers and trying to be a mom. It does get very hard. So I won't pretend like it's all easy, but I think what helps is a little bit every day goes a long way. And what I would, if I were to give anybody a tip, and this is truly a very heartfelt tip, because I have a lot of women who come to me and say, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done X or done Y." And I think if you can, what I would say is don't take your foot completely off the pedal. Like, you can slow down when you need to, but stay in the game to the extent you can. And then when you're ready, you can accelerate. And I think that is, if again, this is my very personal perspective, and I'm really like kind of sharing this. I think that is a better way to stay consistent and keep that discipline of whatever skill or domain, or whatever your area where you want to shine as an expert is. Because if you do that, I think over the long run, it all evens out. So the important thing is to not completely step off of it. And even when things get tough, slow down as much as you need to, and then accelerate when you can. So that's, like, I don't know if that resonates for everybody, but that I think has worked for me. I will not say that I was able to go 100% on everything all at the same time. There were times when I needed to focus more on my career. There were times when I actually took a sabbatical from work to focus on dance. I actually took a sabbatical from Google for, almost 6, 7 months to work on the production I talked about earlier. It speaks. So I have made those kind of choices, but I think the key is, like, try to stay in it, and you know don't worry if it is not, if you can't do 100%. I think even doing 10%, 20% is okay, as long as you can stay consistent. And I think the consistency over the years is what will turn somebody into is what turns people into experts.
First of all, thank you so much for being so honest and vulnerable about sharing, discipline with us. It really means a lot. I was a stay-at-home mom for many years before I got back to career. But this, that, can I do it all? Always on everybody's
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
right? And I think you said it so well. So be consistent. Staying in the game is more important than winning the game.
Yeah. That's how I look at it.
Build the discipline to do a little bit, because little bit goes a long way, right? And as you are gearing up, gear up for the marathon and not the
That,
sprint, right? And that is so well said. I really believe that this framework that you shared, this perspective, is going to be so helpful to so many who are wanting to build a long-standing career. On the days when you feel like, oh, I can't do more, what are two things that Jyotsna does to bring herself back up?
In a very tactical way.
Yes.
Um, that's interesting. I think one thing that I do is I will go for a walk. I find, or I'll do yoga.
Okay.
And I find that just sometimes just completely disconnecting from the problem or the challenge and just creating like a little bit of a safe space for yourself, I think is a good way to just get some perspective that no matter what, it's going to be okay. So I think just creating those kind of moments for yourself when it just feels like everything is, it's like feels like everything is too heavy, or whatever it is that you're whatever, if there's a decision that's difficult, or whatever the situation will be. I think, yeah, just creating some, I think, safe space like that for yourself is, I think, helps. I think the other thing I try to do, and I'll give you an example. As I mentioned earlier, we are working towards this production, and I have had this. It is very stressful to be producing, directing, dancing, in the midst of also doing a lot of other things. And there are moments where I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And the self doubt certainly creeps in, where you're like, what if nobody shows up? Especially when you're an artist and you spend months and months working towards
Yeah.
one evening, and just those 2 hours have to go really well.
Yeah.
And everything has to align. And you have put in like a year's worth of time into this 2 hours. How do it's unavoidable that you have this kind of fear. But then one thing that I have been doing, and I'm is just visualize for yourself the worst case scenario.
Mm.
And I think for me, every time I do that, I'm like, okay, the worst case is not that bad. Like, I
Mm.
would still be happy I did the production, no matter how many people came, or no matter how perfectly it turns out, because the why is still important to me. This particular production is a tribute to my guru, and it's something that I really wanted to do and share with, you know, people here in the Bay Area. There are so many artists in the Bay Area. Um, and so then when I visualize that, I'm like, okay, it's okay. Right. So that I think that visualization also helps. So just, I think every time you have some fear or you have some, I just try to visualize, okay, so what? Right. You try. And then yeah, I think it kind of helps put things in perspective for me. So yeah, I know those are very tactical things, but it's
I love that.
literally.
Yeah, I love the tactical things because look, I think they are so common, like the self doubt you said. I can nod my head 100 times, and I'm sure many others can too, right? I
Yeah.
think, what I heard from you was treat yourself with the same empathy as you would treat others. Give
Yeah.
yourself the time and space to react, to process, step back to gain perspective, go for a walk or do anything that helps you gain that perspective and help your own self to rest, relax, and come back. Jyotsna, one thing you said even in the previous question that's lingered on my mind. You talked about how different perspectives when you're creating and co-creating, whether it be a product feature, whether it be a production, there are so many moments where there are difficult conversations and different opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Very tactically, what are some of the ways in which you approach these conversations? Because these are difficult for many.
Yeah. Um, I think difficult conversations, I think how you manage it depends on what role you're playing. As a leader, you have a different kind of problem, which is like when you have a team and there's differing opinions, how do you help the team resolve and move forward? And think as a team member, you have also a challenge, which is how do I voice my opinion without being without there being consequences, or some just because my opinion differs from say maybe the leader, who are the leaders, and how do you do that and in a way that is appropriate, but also safe. So I think maybe I'll start with the team member perspective, right?
Sure.
Because day to day you're part of a team. If you are looking to, maybe you're seeing something go a certain way, and you have an opinion that maybe that's the wrong direction. The way One approach that I typically recommend is this. I generally like putting these things, especially in the tech world. I generally really like this approach of like, there's no right or wrong. Important thing is identify all of the options. So it's important to identify, because there really is, like, there always will be multiple ways to do something. So first off, I think you should accept that, because if you're thinking there's one way to do this, that's already, I think you're already in trouble. Um, so I really encourage my teams to come with a table, put
Mm,
down all your options, and create, some columns that say what are the pros and cons, right?
mm,
Now the pros and cons, depending on what the area you're talking about, could be data driven, could be, maybe there's data about what impact each of these things will have, about, maybe there's a legal perspective to these
mm,
pros and cons, maybe there's like, you know trade off in terms of how much usage something will get versus how fast it is to build. So like, I think of like, let's there's no right or wrong, let's put it all down. I think that approach for me has generally worked well, because, and even coming as a team member, I think it's, if you have a opinion that you want to share, I think what's more important is not just sharing the opinion, but sharing why you think that is a good or
right.
bad opinion, and
Mm,
being open to also doing due diligence on the other options or opinions which may not be yours.
mm,
So I always ask, I think it's very important to embrace all options and look at them objectively, and really think about and really fill out, I mean, lack of a, better way to say it is really fill out that pros and cons table. So once you kind of step away from, oh, this is my option, and I cannot even think beyond this option, and you step away from, oh, my job is actually to fill out this table, then you kind of like then you can kind of start to step back from that and see the big picture. So, and as a leader as well, I try to encourage my teams to come with this kind of perspective, especially if they weren't able to make a decision on what's the best option. And there's like, a lack of consensus within the team. Usually I will say like, okay, like let's look at it. Let's look at all the options and let's look at it. And then I think once you have that written down,
mm,
actually becomes much less it becomes less personal. It's not like A's opinion versus B's opinion. It becomes more about, these are all the options we have. It is, because this is a complex space. These are all the paths we can take. Now let's all look at it objectively to see what is it that we're willing to trade off. Do we want time to market, or is it impact? Is it, so which of those things are we willing to trade off first? And then I think the conversation becomes much more objective, right? So I think, and it's become really about doing the right thing for the business, or whatever your objective is, versus I think it being personal. So I think that's what makes it harder. That's what makes conversations
mm.
harder, is because when when people start to look at it as a more personal thing, which is not unavoidable, right? But how do you kind of uh, try to break away from that and just make it more of a safe conversation? So
I like the practical tips right there, right? Which is do everything to make it non-personal, even though it is. Which is bring all the options. There are no bad questions. All options are good
exactly.
options. Consider all of them. Bring objectivity into assessing them rather than subjectivity, which is this is my opinion
Right.
versus this is the impact it creates. I love that, and I can see the parallelism in both. No matter which experience you're creating, the process
Yeah.
is the same. Jyotsna, thank you so much for sharing your experience in such a honest and earnest way with us.
Sure.
I think there are so many pro tips people can just take and run with. I would love to go to our next segment,
Okay.
rapid fire questions. And I'm not going to put you on a timer, but the intention is to keep the questions fast and the
Let's do
answers
it.
fast. So let's do rapid fire 5 questions. Question one: looking back, What's one skill you didn't know you needed, but you really wished your 20-year-old self had known when you started your career journeys? And why?
It's okay to fail.
Ah, I love that. And why do you think that would have been helpful?
Because I think I would have had a lot less fear to try more things, experiment, and as we talked about earlier, launch and iterate, all of those things. So I think that that's definitely a skill that takes a little bit of time to build, and it also comes with confidence. So I think certainly my 20-year-old self was trying to get everything perfect, and I think that's not possible.
So it's okay to fail,
Yes.
focus on the journey,
And
and go ahead.
exactly, and learn the lessons from it that kind of, will just make you stronger every single time you get up. So, yeah.
So focus on journey versus the perfectionism. Learn, go
Yes.
in with a growth mindset. That's a great one to share. What's your super skill? And for somebody who's, looking to be the next Jyotsna with that super skill, what would be a couple of pro tips that they can actually embark and build that skill?
Yeah, I would say uh my skills would be like the three things I like, I would describe myself as is like definitely collaboration. I think that's
Mm,
important in the sense that to succeed in any area as a leader, you need to be willing to collaborate, and bring people along. Because any large, successful effort, whether that's a dance project, an artistic project, or a product and or a startup, cannot be done by a single person. So just the being able to accept that actually collaboration results in much bigger outcomes. The other two I alluded to earlier would be consistency and discipline. So I think again, just staying at it, continuing to hone your skills, continuing to be a student in many
mm.
ways, I think is important. Like always learning. I definitely think as an artist, I think a lot of why I'm here is because I spent most of my life thinking I'm just a student, and I think that is important. And I see sometimes a lot of young people who very quickly feel like they have graduated, and I think the reality is actually you're always a student. And I think those would be kind of my super strengths, I would say.
Yeah, and I see them. I see them in the productions I've had the opportunity to witness in person. So
Thank you.
collaboration, it's us versus me, which is knowing it takes everybody to get something right. I also heard discipline and consistency, which is have the growth mindset and humility in learning that
Yeah.
there is more to do. What is the one daily habit you believe has been a game changer for you?
Very tactically, one daily habit, I wouldn't say daily, but close to daily would be
Sure.
doing yoga.
Doing
uh,
yoga.
I,
Okay.
I do think it has been a game changer for me. I think I discovered it rather late, and more out of need and necessity. And I think it can be a game changer. The other thing again will be consistency. Like I think even if I cannot do a lot, I will do a little bit on that day. If a
Mm,
particular day is just running away, it's just, I'm getting randomized, I'm just not able to get to the things I want to do, I will just accept that, but at least try to do like 5%. Maybe I had planned like 50%, but I will settle for 5%, which is better than not doing it at all.
mm.
So I think that I think that has served me well.
Yeah.
So.
Now that's great tips. Be consistent and yoga for you has been a game changer. Question 4. If you could have dinner with any fictional character or historic figure, who would that be and what would you ask them?
Oh wow. Um, Fictional character
Or historic,
or
a real
historic.
character. Yeah.
I guess I'm definitely very much in awe of Steve Jobs.
Oh,
I've read
okay.
his biography multiple times. Um, Partly just because of the vision, but also like the simplicity with which he kind of, and the passion with which he approached a lot of the products that he built. And had a vision for, and so on. And just so yeah, I think if I would ask him any question, it would definitely be around, you know, where did he draw inspiration from? I think
Mhm.
would be, because a lot of times vision comes from something that you draw inspiration from, and so I think it's how do you stay open to be inspired? So
I love that. How do you stay inspired? That's a great question. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mhm.
The last question, Jyotsna, I know you are a coffee enthusiast, so I had to ask you this question. So here's a quick coffee question for you, a three-part coffee question.
okay.
Favorite brew method? What's a
Mm.
must have gear for you to make your favorite cup of coffee? And the one rule you live by and never break for a cup of coffee. So, favorite brew method. What's the one gear that you need for making your best cup of coffee? And what's the one rule that you live by and never break for coffee?
Okay. I guess favorite gear. Well, being South Indian, I have to say it's the filter coffee.
Filter coffee, yeah.
I again, actually started using it pretty late in life, but once I started using it, I've been hooked.
So that's been a
Uh,
game changer for your coffee.
yes, it's been a
Yeah.
game changer, and I guess maybe the comparison would be like a pour over, right? Like you're
Yeah.
basically it's similar to a pour over.
Yeah.
And in terms of one thing I wouldn't compromise is like making fresh coffee, like having
Mm.
it super fresh. I'm not a fan of, brewing the coffee and then having it the next day or like, 8 hours later. So one thing I never compromise is like I just try to make it fresh. Even if I have to wait, I would, yeah, fresh coffee beats anything else. So, yes.
I so pour over coffee, fresh coffee. It's always worth the wait.
Yes.
Jyotsna, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being so fun in your conversations and being so giving in your conversations. I really appreciate you joining me today for a career in progress conversation.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, and best wishes for more of these. And yeah, and I know I talked a little bit about this, but I would love to have you and our, viewers here today learn more about our upcoming production on September 13th at Cupertino at De Anza College. It's called Ananta. It's a tribute to a great legend. And would love to see you all there and be able to share a little bit of what I talked about today in real life. So,
I would absolutely love to. Also, the link to that production would be available with the post. So, to all the viewers, please go and watch an incredible artist perform an incredible experience. Thank you so much for everything. It's been
thank
an
you.
honor speaking with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.